Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be covering the Community Force training, and this will be for grants and scholarships platform both. And we're going to be doing the Global Administrator training. And today we have on the line myself. I'm Christine Smith, the trainer here with Community Force. And we also have Daniel Ayala. He's our sales manager. He's going to be assisting me with any questions you may have. He will be dropping off towards the end of the call, but we will have him for a little while on the call to assist with any questions. And then also during the webinar, all of the attendees have been muted. And as we go through the training session, we'll break midway through for a question and answer section. And at that point, you'll be able to ask questions regarding topics covered. So of course, go ahead, as we're going through the training, feel free to enter your questions in the dialog box that you'll see. If you don't see that dialog box, you can go ahead and click. You should have this little orange setting here, this little bar that has the orange arrow. If you click that orange arrow, it should open and you should be able to see the dialog box open at that time. And then you'll also see a plus sign that says questions. You can click on that, and then that'll open up the dialog box where you can simply type in your question and then go ahead and hit send, and it will send it to the staff. And we'll go ahead and when we get to the questions and answer section, we'll go ahead and look at those questions at that time. And then also for anyone, if you're having difficulties and you need Daniel to assist you, you will see a little hand here that you can raise. Go ahead and click that raised hand, and then he can assist you on the call if needed. So I'll give you a few minutes to locate everything. Okay, it looks like everyone's doing okay, so I'll go ahead and go forward. So of course, the users that are going to benefit from today's training session are going to be the global administrators. And the purpose of this webinar is to familiarize you with some of the various functions that are available on the administration dashboard. And of course, this is session 2 of our global administrators training session. And so today we're going to be covering some of the key functions on that administration dashboard. We're going to be looking at the search filters. Those are being used for funding sources. Some of our clients use those to link to funding sources. Sponsoring organizations is what it would be called on the scholarship site. And on the grant site, a lot of them say grant-making organization. And then also status details. If any of you are wanting to start using status details, we'll be talking about how to set those up on your site. Control mapping, if you want to change the labels of your icons, we'll be covering that in control mapping. The application invitation process, that's used for a private application, so we'll kind of cover how that's set up. And then external system authentication settings, I'm just be doing a brief overview of that. Many of our clients aren't using those, but I thought I would at least just kind of cover it so that if you saw it on that dashboard, you understood what it was used for. The managed system messages, a lot of times you get those messages that pop up on your screen during your use of the site, and those have numbers directly linked to them. So we'll also talk about how you can edit those. The master application, how that's set. The application funds, there's a way to actually do a multiple update of application funds. The manage academic year, budget year fields, and then also the application help. We'll kind of be covering that as well. And so today during the training session, I will be using the grant platform the majority of the time. However, I will bounce sometimes back to the scholarship site, excuse me there, and show you some of the items so that you can get familiarized with how it looks on the scholarship page as well, because it can get kind of confusing when we're showing grant language. But just know that what we're showing you on the grant side is the exact same on the scholarship site. Some of the icons may be named a little different, and I will address those names as we go through. So let's go ahead and go to the site. So let me just go ahead and log on to the browser here. And here's our grant site. And of course, to access, let me pull this up here, to access the administration dashboard, let me log into the grant site here. You will come to your home dashboard and go to the administration icon. And when you click on that administration icon, it will take you to this dashboard here. And then of course with the scholarship site, I'll go ahead and log in there so you can see it's the same. Here we are on the home administration dashboard. So here are the icons on the scholarship site. You can see you have search filters, sponsoring organizations, status details, and if I go to the grant site, you can see it's very similar. It's just this is called grant making details and grant search filters. So the first item I kind of want to cover today is the first item that you see here on the site, and this is the grant search filters on the scholarship site. It's called search filters. And what search filters are used for are when you have multiple funds available to for the applicants to apply. Search filters are put onto your funding sources so that applicants can search for that funding based on a search screen. Now what I mean by the search filters, creating those search filters, of course when I was logged out here, I'll show you on the scholarship site, when I log out, these are what we call the search filters. These are the filters that are set for applicants to be able to search on funding that is available, specific applications that you have available for funding. And all of these search filters are set in the search filters on the administration dashboard. Then once they're set on the administration dashboard created there, then in the funding source you start then saying what funding sources have what search filters. And then that's all linked, and then the applicants come here, they search for that specific criteria, they enter the criteria, hit the search for eligibility, and then they can find that funding source. So of course to create search filters, you click on the search filter icon in that administration dashboard. And a screen similar to this one opens up. And the site comes with 20 search filters. You can only use 20 search filters. That's the limit. And we have some that are defaulted on the site. Some of them may look similar to this, as you can see. And what activates them and turns them off are these columns here, the active column and then hidden from search columns. These are what make them activated. So of course, the ones that come standard on the site you can edit. And then you'll also notice you'll see some that say future use. Those are just ones that we haven't used. However, the ones that are there, feel free to edit them to fit your process. So it's just a matter of course, on the ones you're editing, all of them do have to be edited. You would just click on this edit icon to the left, click on it. And then you'll notice as soon as I click on it, it opens up the fields that are needed to populate that specific search filter. So this is just creating one search filter. Each one of these would be a separate search filter. So of course the columns here, the sort order, of course, would be the order that it would fall on the listing page. So when I was on this listing page, this is the order. So this would be number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4, and so forth. So that's the order that they would appear. And to activate them, you would want to make sure to mark this as yes. And then once this was marked as yes, it would then show up in that listing of search criteria. And then the requirement field, what that is used for is if a search filter is required. So let's say you want to force them to answer that specific search filter. So when they're searching here on the search page, in order to search for eligibility, they have to make a selection. You want them to select that specific search filter. Then what you would do is mark that as required yes. And then you also can use search filters for internal purposes. So let's say you wanted to create some search filters that were for internal purposes that only staff seen. You could go ahead and do that by not activating it and then hiding it from that search screen so that you could tag it on the funding source, but then not have it available for your applicants to be able to search on, but you maybe want staff members to be able to see a specific criteria for that specific funding source. So you could say hidden from search, yes, and then it wouldn't be on the search page for the applicants, but only when you're building that funding source, it would be available there in the build of the funding source. And we'll show you that in a minute here. The external name as appears to applicant is exactly what that says. So this is where you would type the name that you want the applicants to see, the label for that. That would be like this right here would be that name that the applicant sees. So that's where you would put the external name. The internal name, a lot of times you may have a different one. The external name is going to be more of maybe a sentence statement, and then the external name may be more of what your organization refers to that specific criteria as. And then you have two means of creating listings for the applicants. You can have it to where it's a drop-down listing, to where they have a list that they can select just one item to search on. Or you can make it a multiple select. If it's a multiple select, then that gives them the ability to, in that specific, this one specific search filter, they can search on multiple areas. So like here on state, if we wanted them to be able to search on Alabama, Arizona, any of these states, not just one state, then we would make that a multi-select. That way they could select multiple choice answers to search on. And then the XML name, again, is important with mapping in the system. So sometimes there is some mapping with search filters. So if there's an XML name, then you would want to make sure that you wouldn't change that. That's important, especially if we have integration with an outside system. So if you have a third-party system that's integrating with Community Force, a lot of time this XML name is what's mapping it from your system to our system. And then, of course, the most important area here is the list of items. So this is where you're going to list the items that they have to choose from. And you'll notice in this listing, each individual item is separated with this tilde symbol, not a space, but a tilde symbol. Then it goes on to, it goes on to the next item here. And then it goes with a tilde symbol here, and then it goes to the next item. So each one of those, that's the separator from one item in the listing to the next one. So this one would have, this is the first listing, this would be the second listing, this would be the third listing in that drop-down list. And you can kind of see how each one of these, so you would, if you wanted to enter another item, you would enter the tilde. And the tilde, in case you were unaware of where it might be located, on your shift key, if you look at your top row of numbers, it's usually next to the number 1, and it's on the shift of that number 1, the key next to number 1. You can see that. Okay? And then you would just simply select the tilde and then type your next item here. Okay? And then a next one, and then so forth. And then at the end of the line, of course, you wouldn't enter a tilde, you would just leave it blank there. Okay, so that's how you would create search filters. If you wanted to use one of these that says future use, it would be just a matter of activating it, opening up the edit again, and then just completing the specific fields. And then once you have them created, they will be present here on this listing. And then they'll also be present on the build of the funding source. So if I go back to the home dashboard, and I go to set up grants here, and scholarships, of course, it's going to be set up scholarships more likely on your dashboard. So this is set up scholarships, and then in the grants, it's going to be set up grants, same location, same icon, same information. So when you click on that icon, this is where you then have your funding sources that were built, and you would click on the funding source, and this is also when you're actually setting up that funding source, these search filters will appear. But if you scroll to the bottom of the page, it has search filters, and then this is where, if you had search filters activated, this is where you would then start identifying each funding source by clicking the edit, and then identifying the search filters that made that fund eligible for applicants to apply to it. And when you set up search filters on funding sources, it's important that when you use them, you use all the appropriate search filters. So for instance, if this funding source, the search filters have been activated, but this funding source here, like it says grant type, or it could say maybe even scholarship type, if you have scholarships, fellowships, that sort of thing. So this could actually this specific funding source may not be grant type specific, but you would still want to select all so that when the applicants chose the search filter, this would return on the results. Because if you don't, then if they did choose a competitive grant or affiliate grant or some type of a scholarship listing, then if you didn't have it linked on the specific funding source, they would not be able to find that. So you want to make sure on the ones that if this doesn't apply to them, the specific search filter, make sure to say all, and then you would click OK, and then you would save that search filter. And then you would go to the next one. So if this one was county specific, I would just select the county that would make them eligible for that funding source, because it would just be that one specific county. And then I would click OK, and then click Save. And then on this one, of course, I would do the all, select all, because if they, remember, they're searching for this funding source, you want them to be able to find it. If they do choose a specific one of these items, you still want them to have that returned in their results. So that's how you would create the search filters. And then also along with the search filters, of course, if you do use search filters, there was that site setting and site settings to activate the search filters. And so you want to make sure that if you are using search filters, that you have set that site setting in the administration dashboard. That site setting is under General Settings, and it's that default page before login, default page after login. You'd want to set that, as well as the administration site settings under General Administration. I'll show you here. So you have these site settings here. So enable search by eligibility criteria would be set to yes. So you'd have that setting set to yes. And then also the default page before and after login, when would you want them to see that search page? You want to make sure you activate that. If this says enable search by eligibility criteria is no, that search screen would not be present on that front page. So if I was to put this to no and I save it just so you can see here, and I was to log out, you could see that that search went away, and I cannot use the search filters. Even though they were marked active, they are no longer present on that search screen. So that's one of the settings you want to make sure that you do have set if you are using search filters in the system. Again, that's the site settings, and then the enable search filter by search by eligibility criteria set to yes. Okay? So that's how you would set search filters. So then the next item we're going to cover is grant making organization. So this is grant making organization on the grant site. And then of course on the scholarship site and the administration dashboard, we have what's called sponsoring organization. So this is the sponsoring organization, and then when I click on the fields, it's the same items that you're going to see. It's just a different label. So when I click on this, this is where what sponsoring organizations and grant-making organizations are used for is some of our clients have multiple applications across multiple departments within their organization, and they also have, or they could also have, I should say, multiple applications across multiple organizations. So they could be maintaining funding sources and applications for other organizations as well as just their own. And so they need a way to be able to identify the application process that belongs to each specific department or each specific organization. And so this grant-making organization or that sponsoring organization, this is where you would set up those additional organizations, because of course the site belongs to you, the client, but then you also need a way to then add those organizations to the site. And then once you add them to the site, you'll be able to add them to the specific funds, to the application form, as well as user accounts. You'll be able to identify users as belonging to specific organizations. So of course when you open this up, you see a screen very similar to this. If you have organizations, you'll have some listed here. Otherwise, it'll just more than likely just be your organization listed. If you aren't using this feature, yours will still be listed as an organization. But if you needed to add an organization, it's just a matter of coming up here, entering the name of that organization, and then the information, so just any type of information you might like to keep on that specific organization. And then also you could upload their logo. So you just upload the sponsor logo. You would click here, you would locate the logo on your dashboard and then open, and then it would download that logo to that specific organization's setup. And then you would just click Save and Exit. And then once you click Save and Exit, of course, it takes you out. If I would have just clicked Save, it would have kept me on this page. But then you'll see if I scroll through here, if I scroll down, that organization that I just created will now be there. And so all this is doing is just creating a drop-down listing. And then this drop-down listing is then available when you are building your application form. So under the Home dashboard, under Setup Application Forms, this is the same location in your scholarships. It would be set up your application form. You would select your application. And then in each application's page, there is this general information icon. So when I click on that, you will see this screen. And then on this screen, this is the application that's being built. And then here you have grant making organization. And whatever organizations are in that sponsoring organization or that grant making organization listing that we just set up, then when I hit this drop down listing, it lets me identify this specific application. I would select the actual organization that this application belonged to and then click OK. And then only the individuals, so in the user accounts, I'll do the same, and only the individuals that have access to this specific Cole Foundation would then be able to access this application form. They would not be able to access other application forms that did not have Cole Foundation listed in them. So that's the one place. So the application has the ability to identify a grant-making organization. And then if I go back out to the home page, and I go to the Setup Grants, again, this would be Setup Scholarships on the scholarship site. And then I'm going to click on this. And then when you're setting up the actual funding sources, so this would say grants for grants, scholarships for scholarships. If you have fellowships, you call them fellowships, then this would say fellowships. So I'm going to go ahead and click on just a specific funding source. And then in the funding source, you will see there's that grant-making organization. Let me just show you in scholarships here. If I go to scholarships, set up scholarships, same thing. And I pull up a funding source. Let's see here. Let's pick this one. And then again, here's that sponsoring organization. So again, I have a drop-down list. And so whatever I choose on this drop-down list and click OK, those are the organizations that have access to this funding source. And so of course, when you create an application and you directly link it to that funding source, you want to make sure the application and the funding source have the same sponsoring organizations, because of course they have to be able to link and be able to see both. And then also you have the ability to add a sponsoring organization to the Setup Users screen. So if I go here to Setup Users, and in the Setup Users, if I edit a user or when I'm creating a user, there's a sponsoring organization. And then this is where you would then identify each user profile. You would then identify what organizations that user should have access to. So of course, if they had access to this one, they could have access to this one and this one. Then when they apply, they could only see these application forms. Or if they're an admin, they would only have access to the applications that were built for those specific organizations. So that's where sponsoring organizations are mainly used, in those three areas, to link a specific organization to specific applications and funding sources. If you just have one organization, you're the client, you don't have any other organizations, then of course yours would be that sponsoring organization that's in the Setup Users and the application build, as well as in the funding source build, in all three of those areas. The next item I want to cover is status details. A lot of our clients are using status details, and if you are using them, you know what they are. So of course, when you are in the site and an applicant is applying, All of you that have gone live, of course, know that in the applicant status screen, so here in Home, and if I go to the evaluation dashboard, I'm in the scholarship site actually right now, but it's the same for grants. So if I'm looking for my applicants and I'm in my applicant status or any applicant report where I can see statuses, of course, this will open here. There we go. So of course we have the status column, but remember we also have status details. Statuses, remember, are system-defined statuses that the system will automatically move an applicant through the process. So of course some of the examples of statuses are pending submission, submitted, under committee review. Those of you who have used the site and gone all the way through an application process, you'll know that these automatically are set by the system. So pending submission, as soon as an applicant starts their application, they go to pending. As soon as they hit that submit button, the system automatically puts them to submitted. As soon as you go to your committee review and start assigning, they go to under committee review. So that's what the system does automatically. But a lot of times between maybe the submitted stage and the committee review stage, or even your committee review, you may have multiple steps or stages that you perform that you need to track aside from what we're providing for you here automatically. So that's what status details do. Status details allows our users to create their own statuses to be able to tag applicants through their own process. So of course if you had a review process, you might have a status detail of approved review 1, denied review 1. And then you could filter on those and you could see who was approved in the first round, who was denied in the first round. And when you first get the site, we do have default status details. These are some of the default ones that come on the site here. Those can be changed, so those are the defaults. And to change status details, of course, let me exit out of here. Let me just go here to Home. You would go to the administration dashboard, to the status details icon here, and this would open up the listing that's already there on the site. Now status details, there are no limits on how many status details you can create. Now when you first get the site, we have, like I said, we have these default status details out there. We have about 9 or 10 of them already preloaded. Some of the sort order isn't quite right on my test site here. But these are preloaded, but they are not the ones that you have to use. If you wish, you can take the 9 that we have and you can change the name of every single one of these by just simply clicking the edit icon and then changing the name to fit your specific process. So I'm just going to add a 2 here. And then you can change the sort. So what the sort order does is when we looked at the drop-down listing in the applicant status screen, we hit the status details drop-down listing. This is just the order it shows in the drop-down listing. So a lot of our clients, when they're setting up these status details, they want to be able to put it in the order of their process. So like step 1, this is that status detail. Step 2, that's that status detail, in the order that they actually are being used so that they can kind of follow suit with what's happening on their process. And then also you'll notice a little box here called active. So if you notice over here, I have some that say active yes, some that say active no. So the reason we have that is if you do use any of these status details, you do not want to delete a status detail once you've used it. If you delete it, it will remove it from the applicant that you've used it on. So of course if you've used any of these, you would simply just come here and remove the check mark from the active box. To make a status active, you would want to make sure the check mark is in the box, and then I would hit save, and then that would make that specific status detail available on the drop-down listing. It just is creating that listing of status details. So of course here I have these active ones. So of course, you know, when you first got your site, if you haven't used any of these, feel free to go in and edit all of them. And then of course, when you run out of all the slots and you decide you need more than what's already here, then you can just come up here and click the Add an Application Status Detail. And then you just come here and you simply just create the name. You give it a name, a description, so you know why you've created it. And then of course the sort order. So if you wanted this to be in position number 1, you could go ahead and put number 1. And then the most important thing is make sure it's got the check mark in it so that it's active in the listing when you're ready to use, so you can use it. If it doesn't have that check mark in it, then it won't show up in the drop-down listing and won't be active in that listing. And then you just click Save. You'll get a message that it's been updated. And hit Save and Exit. Okay, there we go. That's what I was looking for. And then it'll return back to this screen here, and then there's that status that's there. If you have statuses that you've never used, so of course this one that I just created, if I wanted to clean house, I can go ahead. If I have never used them, then I can go ahead and delete it. But of course, remember, if you have used them, do not delete them. Open them up with the edit, remove that check mark, and make them inactive. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this one. Okay. So that's status details. So one more item I'm going to go to here, and then we'll open it up for some questions, is the control mapping. So what control mapping does is, if you notice, every single one of these icons has a little label. So of course, like I've talked about, some of these labels, this says grant search filters. On the scholarship site, that same icon has the name search filters. So in control mapping, what control mapping allows you to do is each one of these labels, it allows you to change the name of the label. Now, if you decide you do want to change the name of your labels, prior to doing so, you want to get a listing of what the labels were before you changed them. Because of course, if you change a label to a name that is not the default name that our team is used to seeing, if you do a support ticket and you go in and say, let's say you call this search questions or something for your search filters. You change this to search questions and you do a support ticket and say, I need assistance with my search questions. Our team isn't going to understand what you mean because they refer to it as a specific name. That was what the name was when you received the site. So of course, to adjust those labels, and it's just the label, not the icon. You can't change the icon, just the label. I'm going to click in on this icon, control mapping, and you'll see a screen similar to this one. And it's just a matter of coming here and clicking the edit. So here's the listing of all of those icons that are out on the site. Clicking the edit. As soon as I click the edit, what happens is you notice it now opens the fields for every single one of those labels. So it's just a matter of coming in, looking for the specific label. And the one thing that you do want to use caution, though, is changing labels that are actual dashboard names, because the team knows them as, the system has some hard-coded programming in the background. And so if you change a name like Manage Application Funds and you change something else to Manage Application Funds, then it doesn't know how to find that specific item. So if you name it the same, sometimes it can get confusing. So of course here, so if I wanted to change so I'm going to look for the administration dashboard. There's that administration dashboard. There's the search filters. So if I just wanted to call this search filters without the word grants, I just come in here, edit it, make my edit, and then make the appropriate edits to maybe some of the other icons, each one in black. Remember, that's a dashboard. That's the name of one of the dashboards that it takes you to. And when I mean dashboard, of course, when you're on the home page, then when you go into Manage Evaluations, that takes you to that Evaluations screen, which is called Evaluations module here. And then this is where Applicant Status. So you can kind of see the trail that it follows. Okay, and then you would just come here, hit Save. Are you sure you want to update the control mapping settings? Click Yes. Your settings have been updated. And now when I look at that specific item in my administration dashboard, it now says search filters. And if I exit out of here, you will see Edit Now still says search filters. Okay. Do not know why it did not work on that site. Let's go try it on the scholarship site and see if it works. Maybe I should use another item. Okay, so now it has scholarship search filters. Okay, so that's how you would update those. And it looks like my site might have some little bit of a issue going on with it. So, but that's how you would do it on your site. And then when you would come here, it would have the edit of that specific control mapping item. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop here and address any questions. We do have some more items to cover, but I'm going to stop here and see if we have any questions on what we've covered so far, because we have covered quite a bit. So let me just kind of take a look here. Do we have any questions? It's pretty cut and dry, pretty simple setup information. Okay, doesn't look like we do, so let's go ahead and move forward. So the next area on the password policy, some of these settings, the next training, we're going to be going over how to set up user accounts, and some of these settings like the password policy, the role types, some of these other settings we'll be covering in that final training session for the global admin, and that's in regards to setting up anything that has to do with setting up user accounts we'll be covering in that session. So we'll go ahead and skip that one for now. But the application invitation, what this is this is a process. So let's say you have an application form and you don't want to open it up for all individuals to apply to it. You want to make this a private application and you want to invite only specific applicants to apply to this application form. You can create what's called a private application. And to create a private application, of course, what you would do is you create your application form, you set it up, but when you get to the funding source, remember the funding source itself, that's the setup of the funding source, and then in the same in this here, the setup of the funding source, you'll notice it says published yes. So when this says published yes, this means that this is viewable for everyone who comes to the site, so that screen that lists all of your available fundings and all your available applications, if this says yes, this specific funding source along with its application will be present and applicants can apply to it as long as the start and end dates are within range. However, if this is a private application, you can come here, like this one here says no. You can come here on the grant, on the name of the funding source, scholarships or grants, scroll down, and here it says published, viewable to the applicant, no. If this is marked as no, then of course it will not be on that search screen. So the applicants would not be able to see this funding source as being available to apply to. So then how, if they can't get to it, then how would they apply to it? Well, that is where that application setting comes into play. Application invitation. So of course if I click on application invitation, you'll notice when I click on it, it will give me a drop-down listing of the available applications I have on my site, and they would be within range. And I would just simply find the application that I want the applicants to apply to, the private application. So here's my application form. So that's the application I want to invite them to. And then I have the ability to filter. I can filter by first name, last name, email, or just leave it here. What that does is that adjusts how it's viewed over here. So you can kind of see right now I have last name, first name, email. So if I just wanted to search on emails on this, if I wanted to find somebody, I could search just by email, or I could do first name, or I could do last name. So if I just did, for instance, if I type, let's try first name, search. Whoops. Okay, I took it out. Let me go back out. And then, and what this is doing is this is looking at the user profiles in the system. And so, of course, before you even invited an applicant to an application form, they would have to have a user account, an applicant role type user account on the system already. So first of all, you would have to create user accounts for them if they didn't have them. And then once you come here, this will give you a listing of all of the applicant accounts that are on the site. So I selected the application I want to invite them to, and then I have my listing here. Now you'll also notice you have that grant making organization. So if you only wanted to find users on the system that belong to a specific organization, when you created that user account, when that user account was created, of course the applicant didn't tag it to an organization, but you could go in individually on their profiles after they were created, add a specific organization to their profile, and then when you come here, you could filter by a specific organization. And then if you did that, it would only give you the listing of the applicants that belong to that specific organization. That's what this filter here is for. You would select it and then click OK, and I don't have any set for this one, but anyone that was tagged to that CareForce organization in their user account would then, if I hit search, it's going to be just these two individuals were tagged as belonging to that organization in their user profile. So then these ones would be what would be available to invite to this funding source. I'm going to go ahead and clear it though. I'm going to do none. Okay. Hit search because I want everyone. And then of course then all I need to do is locate their name here in the listing. So here, let's say I wanted to find a specific applicant, and I can come up here, I can do Angevine, or I guess I gotta do first name first. So let's do Crystal. Search. And there we have Crystal Craig it pulled up. Okay, so you can search by their name. Okay. Or you can just come, once you find them, of course, then it's just a matter of finding their name in the listing. Once you find them, clicking on their name, you can do one at a time, or you can hold down the control key and select multiple, and then you just hit the arrow to move them over to the assigned side. Click the arrow. Okay. For some reason my site is being very testy with me today. Let's go to the scholarships. Select, let's just pick one of these here. Okay, it's already passed. I gotta find one that's current. That one's passed. Of course, the deadline has to be in range, so. Let's try this one. There we go. Okay. So then I can just come here, start selecting my applicants I want to invite to it, and then move them over with the right-hand arrow for some reason. This one, was it in date range? It has to be in date range for one. Okay. Well, for some reason it's not working on my site. I don't know why it's not pulling them over. It was working earlier for me, but for some reason I can't quite. That one's saying yes, I know that. Okay, could have something to do with the deadline. Let me see if I have one here that's within range. Nope. Let's just go adjust the deadline on one of these. Let me try, I want to do my art fund actually. This one. Just change the dates, so we're within range. Okay, now that could be why it's not pulling up. So let's go back in administration, application invitation, and then I find that grant. Where'd you go? There you are. Okay, and then I just come over here. We'll try this one more time. Now it's going to let me, so yes, that's because of the date range not being within range. Then you hit the arrow, it moves them to the right, and then once you get your applicants over here on the right, you click the save. Are you sure? Okay. Okay. And then once you click the save, they are listed down here at the bottom of the page. But that's not all that happens. As soon as you click save, an email will go to the applicant notifying them, this is immediate, notifying them that there's an application available for them to apply to. Now, there is a site setting in site settings that controls how that email what happens with how they start the application. And what I mean is there's two different things that can happen. One setting in the site settings for this setting is it sends the email to the applicant, and the applicant has in the email a link. They must click on that link in the email, which will take them to the site. Then they log in, and as soon as they log in, that application will show for them to begin applying to it. That's one way. But they have to click that link in the email to be able to see that application form. If they just come to the site, don't click the link and click the login, log in, they will not see that in the search return of applications. They have to click on the link in order to access the application form and then log in from that link. That's one way. The second way, the second setting in site settings, what it does is the applicant, when it sends the email, it notifies the applicant that they can apply. And instead of making them click on the link, then what it does is it actually started the application form for them. So since it already started the application form for them, all they have to do is log in, go to their My Applications tab, and that application will be sitting in their My Applications tab with a request pending status and show that they've already started that application form. That's the second process. So of course, depending on which process you use, and again, that's in the site settings, there's a site setting that turns each one of those processes on. In the Administration General Site Settings, enable automatic application creation through application invitation. If this is set to yes, that's when it will automatically create the application form and put it in the My Applications tab. They don't have to click the link. They can simply just log in normally and go to their My Applications tab, and it's sitting out there if this is set to yes. If this is set to no, then they have to click the link in the application and log in using that link. That's what these two do. And the application form is not started. They're not in a pending submitted status yet. When you go to applicant status, they're not going to show until they have actually clicked the link and started the application themselves. There's two ways that that can happen. So then, of course, depending on what you use here, then that means you need to also go to the email and manage notifications, to the email template, and depending on what you use, what process you use, you will want to update in the Notification Center the email template that is called Application Invitation. This template is defaulted with the information. So here you can see it gives them their login credentials. It gives them the link for them to log into. Let me find it here. This is the URL. This is the application name. This is their email ID. And then also This is the link that they use to access it. So this is the link that they would have to click on to access it. This is giving them their credentials that they can log in with. And then you would want to adjust the message here, because if you were forcing them to click the link, you would not want to tell them that this will appear in the My Applications tab. You want to read this template and make sure it fits your process that you're going to be using. Because if you're forcing them to click the link, you're not doing the automatic creation of application, then it will not be in their My Applications tab and they won't be able to access it there. If that setting is set to no, they have to click the link, and then you'll want to make sure that the message in this email template refers to that specific process. So that's where you would want to change that default email to fit the process that you want to use. Okay, so that's the application invitation process for private invitations. And then another item here we have is the external system authentication settings. That's this item right here. And this is used when you have an external system. So a lot of our universities, more of our scholarships clients would use this. So your university is using Banner, and you want your applicants to log in using their login information for your system. You don't want them to have a separate login for Community Force and a separate login for your site. This is where external system authentication settings come into play. This is where the system is, that login information is set up so for that single sign-on authentication. So of course, if you were using this, this would be marked to yes. Allow new user creation. What that would do is that there could be occasions where a user is currently present on your site, but they may not have had their credentials pushed down to the Community Force system. So you may allow them to create their login on Community Force first, and then it pushes it back up from Community Force. So of course, yes would allow the new user to be created on Community Force, but then no would not allow that new user creation. So that's just do you want them to create their own account and then push it up, yes or no? And then the ID length, of course, that's where that setting would be. The expiration time for the link to be active when they're trying to log in. There's a shared secret key that communicates from Community Force to your site, and that's where that's set up. And a lot of this is set up by the Community Force team and of course, your IT staff would be communicating with them in regards to setting this up. This is the URL of your login page where it would be coming from your site to our site. This is where the expiration, so if they're trying to log in and there's a timeout, then this is the message that they would receive. And then also if there was a fail on the authentication, they also receive a message from our site as well. So that's just real briefly what that's used for. That's for single sign-on, where they're signing in from your system into our system, and just some of the key settings as to where those are housed, just so you know where those are located. And then also you've noticed, as I've been doing some of the items, I've been getting little messages popping up on my screen, like the one that I got when I was in the application invitation saying the deadline has passed. Manage system messages are where those messages are housed. If I click on Manage System Messages, you will notice a whole listing of several pages of all of those system messages. Now, whenever you get a message, you will notice a code. A lot of times when that message pops up, there will be a code in that message. Let's see if I can get one to pop up here real quick. Let's go in. Let's just go in here. I know exactly how to get one. Not that one. Let's get one here somewhere. Set up grants. See if I can get one to pop up with a number. Okay, so here's a system message. and notice the number 307. So if ever you see a system message and you don't like the way it's worded, especially if it's a message an applicant may get, you can actually go in to System Messages in the Administration Dashboard under Manage System Messages, and if you know the code, you can simply just type it in here, or if you know the type of message, which is this right here, you can type it. If you remember what the description was, you can type it here, and then you can click Search, and when you click Search, that message will appear. And you can edit that message by clicking the edit icon. When I click the edit icon, the message will appear up here on the top, and you can go ahead and make the adjustment. Now, when you are editing system messages, it is very important, anytime you see a merge field like this one in brackets, that is looking at a specific item, fund label, so that would be the label on the fund. So you would never remove this specific field from your messages because those merge fields are important for those messages to return correctly, especially if you have multiple funds and you're going to have multiple fund labels. And so depending on where that message pops up, that's where it's going to give them that name. So anytime you see a merged item, an item in between brackets, do not add spaces in between those brackets, do not remove the brackets, and do not remove the merged item. Other than that, you can update the actual text of that specific message, but the merged items you will not want to remove from those message fields. But of course, it'd just be a matter of coming here, typing your information in the box, and then clicking the Save to save the message that you just changed, okay? I'm going to go ahead and click Exit because I don't want to change that one. And then once you made the change, then of course it would be present, and then every time that message appeared, now it would have the new message in it. So a lot of times if you're looking at a message and you see it does not appear, but maybe the application name, it could be looking at the application name, and it's the application name you need to edit, not the text here. The application name may be what you need to edit. So like sometimes we've had clients call and say it said something to the extent of, let's say for an illustration like this one, it could say in your application name you could have said something about the name of your application could be the scholarship application is the name. And then here this text could have said application does not appear to be a valid application. So they say that they would say something like to the extent of, it says application twice in that specific message. Well, the reason that is because the application name had the word application in it, and then maybe the text for a specific message had application after that specific application name. So the item after the merge field, of course, you could remove, but you don't, or go in and change. You would maybe want to go in and change your application name to take the application off if that was your case. So that's something you want to look at, is where is the error or making the duplicate of information happening? Is it in the text of the message, or was it from the name of the application form in the specific illustration? Okay, so that's how you would update messages. A lot of you also are using a master application. So of course a master application, there is a training guide module 3, and in module 3, I believe it's item 3.1, it actually talks about the use of a master application. And of course you would create your master application, and then the master application allows you to push data down to your other application forms that aren't active. They have to be the date, they have to be not an active application, and applicants, the date hasn't come into range yet, so applicants haven't applied to it. So anytime you have a master template and you have all these applications you're building, then you can make a change in the master template and push them down to all the other applications that aren't active yet. So of course what you would do is create the application just like you would normally create an application, build that application form, then you would come here to set master application, click that icon, and then select the application that you created as your master template. And a lot of our new clients, especially our grant clients, you've probably seen a master template out there. And that master template has already been set up. You will not need to set this up. It's already been set up as the master template. But on those who don't have a master template, you would have to come here, find the application you wanted to be that master template, and then click Set as Master Application. This one actually has a master application built on it, so I don't want to set it, but that's how you would do that. It's just a matter of building the application, coming here, and telling the system what application is that master template. And then, of course, applicants cannot apply to a master template. Master template's just for building purposes only. Then, of course, once you tagged it as the master template, when you went into your applications and the building of your applications, you can use that to clone from. And then notice here, this is the one that's not published. It doesn't have ability to delete it. And then when I click on it, you'll see it's a little different in the sections and questions section because it's the master application. Notice here I copy questions, push changes from master. That's where this is all housed if this is the master template. That setting in the administration dashboard is what tells the system that that specific application is the one to have that information built on it, added to it by this set master application. The other item, manage application funds. This is also covered in our fund setup module. And a lot of you that have what's called a one-to-many process have one application with multiple funds. And in the application build itself, scholarships would be a better illustration of this because the majority of those clients that use the one-to-many process are scholarship applicants. But in the setup of applications, you have multiple funding source maybe tied to an application. And in the build of the application, you have a manage application funds. And this is where you take and add all of those multiple funding sources to your specific application form. So this one had 3 scholarships tied to where applicants were applying to this application and then being matched to these 3 scholarships. You set this up here on the individual application. However, in the administration dashboard, it's the same setting. It's just a manage application fund, and it allows you to not just be in one application. It allows you to pick an application, do the fund setting for that one, save it, then go to the next application, add multiple funds for that, save it, because some of our clients have more than just one application active. That's a one-to-many process. So they want to be able to come here. They don't want to have to go all the way out. Click in the Setup Application form, find the application, go to the Manage Application Fund, add the funds to that one, then go back out, find the next application. This just expedites it a little bit in that in the administration dashboard, they have the ability to see all of the funds in the front here, so they can click on the one, okay, click on another one, see, okay, what funds are linked to that one, click on another one, and so forth, and go ahead and set the funding sources for those. Okay, so that's just another means for doing that. Role types we'll cover next month. Academic years, so let me cover this one, and then application help, and then we'll go ahead and address more questions. So academic years. Academic years are, so this is scholarships, it's called academic years. Grants, administration, it's also called manage academic years and grants. A lot of our clients, this will say manage budget year or fiscal year, but for some reason my specific site, it was recently updated and it now says academic year, but it should say budget or fiscal year on grants and then academic year on scholarships. So it's the same icon. So what that is, you've probably noticed this, maybe noticed it but didn't pay much attention to it. So when you're building your application form, so if I go in here, just pick one here, under general information, When you enter your start date and your deadline date and click Save, you will notice a date that comes up here. What this is looking at is that specific icon in the administration dashboard. There's a chart we'll show you here in a minute, and it says that June 9th, 2014 to December 31st of 2014 falls within, it goes out and looks at that chart and says, okay, it falls within the 2014-15 academic year. That also is used in the funding source. So when you're tying your funding source to your specific application form, so you're here, you're in your funding source, you select your application, you'll notice here, as soon as you select the application, it'll populate this with that academic year based on what the scholarship's general information that's directly linked to that application was built on. Again, that's where it's getting that academic year. That's how it's building that chart from that academic year. And the scholarship or the grant has to have the same academic year or budget year of the application that the applicants are applying to. Each year then the funding source, you would come here, you would adjust it, add a new year, add a new amount, and that's how the system tracks it from year to year. So that's what that's used for. If you're wondering, well, what's the purpose for it? I don't even know why we have to have that. That's how the system tracks for this fiscal year. This is the application that was used to apply, and so it knows that whoever applied to this application were the ones that were going to be used to award to that fiscal year for this funding source. So that chart, a lot of our clients sometimes have said, well, you know what, that's really not what our fiscal academic budget year is. How do we change that? Well, here in administration, under Manage Academic Years, and of course now that you've gone live, if you do have live applications, you've been using this for years and you haven't known how to adjust it, you're better off to enter a support ticket and have our support team make this adjustment for you, because if you do have those academic years set up on your funding source and you've had it from year to year and you start messing with this, that could affect your awarding and history in your system going forward. So if you've already been using this and you do want this adjusted, then you can contact support through entering a Zendesk ticket, and they can make an adjustment for you and make sure that you won't lose your history on your past funding sources. But here you can see if you haven't gone live and you haven't actually adjusted your funding sources, this is where that chart is. You can see start date, end date, this is the academic year. And if I was new to the system and I haven't gone live and I haven't done any awarding, it's my first year, I haven't adjusted my academic years for the next year, I haven't done that rollover process, then I can come here, but you want to start at the end of the list and work backwards. So you'd hit the edit, you'd make the change on that one, then you would save it, go to the next one, and then work your way up. So that's where, if your academic year chart isn't correct, you're better off entering a support ticket so that they can adjust that for you. But this is where you would do that. And then of course there's 3 pages. It takes us to the year 2030. So again, if you needed more, you could always click the add new and add more. And then the last item I want to cover is application help. So some of you on 8.0 and higher have what's called an open help. And if I click open help, it opens up for the page that I'm on an explanation page that explains the items that you're seeing on that page. So of course, one, if you change your labels, then of course what's here on this information page may not match what your new labels are. So you may want to edit this text. So what application help on this page here, it does is the same as, you will notice here when you are in open help and you have it open, there's an edit help. If you click this Edit Help, it opens up the dialog box that has that text in it, and you can change that text by simply clicking in the editor box and changing the text accordingly. So if I wanted to change this to grant organization or something to that extent, I could do so here. Each one of these has what's called a help text title and a screen name title. If you know what those are, and of course if you don't, you can always go to the page that has the text on it, click on that Edit Help and find it and make the edit there. Or if you know what they are, so if I exit out of here, administration homepage, I can actually go into the application help and see all of the individual pages. And if I know the name, I can come here and search on it, find that specific page, click the edit next to it, and edit the text that way. And this allows me to not just, to have to go to page, hit the edit help. If I know the name of the page, or if I know somewhat of the name, I can search on it. Like if I wanted to do home, the home dashboard, I could probably put in home and hit search, and it would find all of the, there's the one for the manage home screen, administration homepage. And then just once I find it, click the edit. This allows you to do multiple edits on multiple application help screens, and that's what that is used for. So just looking through here, yeah, the rest of this we'll cover in the next training session, so that'll be the end of today's session. So let's see if you have any questions on any of the other items we've covered. And I'm looking through here, and I don't see any questions. Give you a few minutes in case you're typing. Okay, let me just pull this out, make sure I'm not missing somebody's. Okay, as you can see, it was pretty self-explanatory. Okay, here's a question here. Let me pull it up, open it up here. Okay. And let's see. Okay. So there was a question, kind of unrelated. I will go ahead and address though. This must be a new client. You're asking about how can you assign applicants to be under committee review. So if you use the evaluation setup process, and that's the evaluation setup, there was a training on that in the past. When we send out the link for today's video, you'll notice at the bottom of that email that comes to you, there are some additional links to some other training sessions. And I believe, and I may not have the exact wording on it, but there was a training session on evaluation setup, and then I think another one on evaluation management. And those training sessions will cover how to put an applicant to under committee review. So as soon as you assign applicants to your committee members, as soon as you are assigning a task to a committee member and you choose the applicants to assign to your committee members, the system will automatically move an applicant to a status of under committee review. And that's how it would do that. You can, which you more than likely don't want to, but if you aren't using our system to do your review process, you can always use the change status. So if you're an applicant status, there's that change status too, and it's a matter of selecting the applicant. So if I wanted to manually move an applicant because I'm not using the system, so the system, of course, if I'm not using the system, let me see if I can get my site to come back up here. If I'm not using the system, and so of course then the system's not going to automatically assign them. If I choose to not use the system, I still can go into my application under applicant status. But that one doesn't have any applicants. Find one that has some applicants. Let's see, let's go to the grants. Manage evaluations. Since we've got some time, I'll address these questions. And let's see, I believe this one might have some data. Nope, I gotta find one with some applicant data. Okay, so you're looking at the applicants. If you do not use our evaluation setup and you do not assign committee members to applicants and tasks, and you want to manually move the status, you can come here by selecting it, coming up here to change status to, change it to under committee review, and then clicking this change applicant status, and then it'll change their status to under committee review. If you're doing an outside review process but you still want to tag them in the system so that you know that that's where they're at, then that's how you could do that. Otherwise, the system will do it automatically in that evaluation setup assignment piece. So if you're in the evaluation setup and you've set up your task, you've created your committees, and then you're here in the assignment, as soon as you assign applicants under this icon, they will go to under committee review. So that is it for our session today. So of course, you'll notice in that little dialog box, you will see underneath the question section, a section called handouts. And the guides that cover the information we talked about today are located there. You'll want to make sure you grab the grant one if you're a grant client. And then if you're a scholarship client, make sure you grab the scholarship site one. So it's just a matter of clicking on, if the handout says a plus sign, hit the plus sign, it'll open it up. You might want to expand it so you know which one's grant, which one's scholarships. So you can just kind of grab over here, you'll get a double arrow and you can pull it over. And then find the one that has grants on the end and scholarships. If you're a grant client, make sure you get grants. And then it's just a matter of clicking on the item in blue. As soon as you click on that item in blue, it will open it up. And then you can just come over here. You can go ahead and then just take it and then click save and save it to your local computer and download it to your local computer that way. Okay. So I'll go ahead and leave this open for a while so that you have time to get that. And then also our next training session will be training session number 3. And in that training session, we will be covering the key areas in regards to how to set up user profiles and then the remaining items in that administration dashboard that go along with setting up user accounts, like how to create different role types for individuals. So like you have the global admin, you have the department admin, you have a reviewer, and you have an applicant. Those are static on the system. Those are role types that come standard on the system, but you might have the need to give a staff member just a specific area of the site. So then how can you create role types for that? And then when you create their user accounts, how do you create all that? And then also we'll talk about how to upload or import a listing into the system to add multiple user accounts as part of that process. So that'll be in the next session. And that next session will be Tuesday, December 20th. So be on the lookout towards the 1st of December, that first to second week in December, for an email to come so that you can register for that as well. So again, this closes our session for today, and I hope I was able to answer all of your questions, and you all have a very wonderful rest of the week, and we will see you in December. So thank you very much for your time, and like I said, I will leave this open a little bit longer so that you have time to grab these guides. I'll leave it open about 5 more minutes for you. Okay, and I thank you. Bye.